Ang topic natin ngayon ay tungkol sa integration by trigonometric transformation. So, dito sa topic na ito, no, meron tayong anim na case ng problem. So, anim na type ng problem, ano. Ang maganda sa topic na ito, ang bawat type ay ibinigay na yung identity o transformation na kailangan gamitin upang yung ating integran ay maging integrable. No? Yung equivalent function niya ay maging integrable. So, case 1 tayo. No? Integral of sine raised to m of u cosine raised to n of u du, where either m or n is a positive odd integer. No? So, dito sa type na ito ng problem, no, when m is odd, and then we need to use the transformation sine squared u equals 1 minus cosine squared u. And then when n is odd, we need to use the transformation for cosine squared. Cosine squared u equals 1 minus sine squared u. Okay, so let us have our example number 1. No? So we have integral of sine to the fifth of x dx. So dito sa ating example na ito, no, yung sine function ay naka-raise sa positive odd power. No? Kaya ang gagamitin nating transformation ay yung sine squared u equals 1 minus cosine squared u. At ang ating n naman dito equals 0. No? Okay? So, solve natin yung problem na ito. No? So, dito, kailangan nating ihiwalay yung isang factor ng sin x. No? Maghihiwalay tayo ng isang factor ng sin x. So, meron tayong integral, no, of sin x. Integral of sin x. Integral of sine to the fifth of x, no, dx. So, maghihiwalay tayo ng isang factor ng sine x dito sa ating sine to the fifth. Kaya ang matitira sa sine to the fifth ay sine to the fourth of x. So, times sine x dx. Katapos, yung lahat ng sine squared ay ililipat natin sa 1 minus cosine squared. Ano? So, yung sine to the fourth, meron tayong dalawang sine squared. At yung sine to the fourth ay equal din sa sine squared of x quantity squared. No? And then, times sine of x dx. Okay. Kaya rin nun, gagamitin na natin yung transformation para sa sine squared, ano, equals sa 1 minus cosine squared. So, ito ay equals sa 1 minus cosine squared of x, quantity squared. And then, times sine of x dx. Okay? Kaya rin nun, i-expand natin itong 1 minus cosine squared of x squared. So, magkakaroon tayo ng 1 minus 2 cosine squared of x, and then plus cosine to the fourth of x, and then times sine of x dx. No? Sine of x dx. So, itong sine of x, multiply natin sa loob at pagkari nun, pag-iwalay natin yung integration ng bawat term. Ano? So, we have integral. So, sine of x dx times 1 ay sine of x dx. Sine of x dx. And then next, meron tayong negative 2 rito. Ito ay constant. Pwede natin siyang isulat sa labas ng integral sign. And then, sine of x dx times cosine squared x. So, magkakaroon tayo rito ng cosine squared x. And then, times sine of x dx. and then plus, no? Tapos, meron tayong cosine to the fourth of x times sine x dx. So, magkakaroon tayo ng cosine to the fourth of x and then times sine of x dx. Okay. So, dito, no? Magla-let u tayo equals cosine of x. So, let u equals cosine of x. And then, our du will be equal to negative sine x dx. No? Negative sine of x dx. So, we will have negative 1 du or negative du equals sine x dx. Sine x dx. Okay. So, pagkakaroon, yung mga integral natin ay susulat natin in terms of u. No? So, una, we have the integral sine. And then, sine of x dx. Sine of x dx equals negative 1 du. So, yung negative 1 lalabas natin. Okay? And then, minus 2. Tapos, meron tayong integral sine. And then, cosine of x. But yung cosine x natin equals sa u. Tapos, it is squared. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng u squared. And then, times sine x dx. Pero yung sine x dx equals sa negative du or negative 1 du. So, yung negative, lalabas natin dito. No? And then, plus. No? And then, meron tayong integral sine. And then, cosine of x. Yung cosine of x equals sa u. Tapos, naka-raise siya sa 4. Tapos, sine x dx. So, yung sine x dx will be equals sa negative du. So, times negative 1 or negative du. No? Times negative 1 or negative du. So, yung negative, lalabas natin. No? Lagay natin dito. Negative. And then du. Okay? So, I will have negative integral of du. As negative 2 times negative 1 or negative is positive 2. And then integral of u squared du. And then positive times negative is negative. Integral of u to the fourth du. Kaya rin nun, mag-integrate na tayo, no? So, integral of du equals u. So, magkakaroon tayo ng negative u. And then, by power rule, dito, no? Integral of u squared du is u cubed over 3. U cubed over 3. And then, minus integral of u to the fourth du by power rule equals u to the fifth over 5, no? And then, plus the constant of integration, c. Pagkari nun, no, ipa-plug in natin yung ating yung value ng x natin, ano, dito sa ating sagot. So, magkakaroon tayo ng, barayin ko muna ito, no? Sa our final answer here, ano? So, negative u. Pero yung u natin equals sa cosine of x. Cosine of x. And then, plus 2/3, no? Tapos, yung u natin equals sa cosine of x. So, cosine of x. At yung u natin dito ay naka-raise sa 3. So, cosine cubed of x. And then, minus yung u natin. Ito, no? Equals sa cosine x. Cosine to the fifth of x. And then, divided by 5. and then plus the constant of integration c. And this is now our final answer. Okay, next. Example number 2 tayo. Nasa case 1 pa rin tayo. Ano? So, yung case 1 natin, integral of sine raised to m of u cosine raised to n of u du, where either m or n is a positive and integer. Okay, so yung ating example number 2, integral of cosine cubed of e to the y, and then times e to the y dy divided by cube root of sine of e to the y. So, itong ating integrand ay equal din ito sa integral of cosine cubed of e to the y, and then times sine of e to the y, cube root of that, equals siya sa sine of e raised to y raised to 1/3. Tapos lilipat natin siya sa ating numerator. So, magkakaroon tayo ng negative 1/3 na exponent sa sine. Sine raised to negative 1/3 of e to the y. And then times e to the y dy. E raised to y dy. Okay. So, dito, ang may positive add power ay yung cosine function. So, yun yung ating n. N equals 3. Tapos, yung exponent ng sine function natin dito equals negative 1/3 yung ating m. M equals negative 1/3. So, m equals negative 1/3. So, dito, yung ating m ay negative 1/3. Okay? So, dito, gagamitin natin yung transformation para sa cosine squared. Equals sa 1 minus sine squared. So, the same procedure, katulad ng ginawa natin kanina sa ating example number 1. So, ang gagawin natin, magtatabi tayo ng isang cosine function, at tapos yung natirang cosine ay lilipat natin sa sine squared naman this time, gamit yung transformation na cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. Okay? So, gawin natin. So, meron tayong integral, So, mag-iwalay natin yung isang cosine. Cosine of e raised to y. So, e raised to y dy. So, inihiwalay natin. Kinuha natin siya sa cosine cubed of e raised to y. Kaya matitira nito ng cosine squared of e raised to y. And then, times sine. Sine raised to negative 1/3 of e raised to y. Okay? Kaya rin nun, yung cosine squared, gagamitin na natin yung transformation, na cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. So, palitan natin yun ng 1 minus sine squared. 1 minus sine squared of e to the y. Okay? And then, times sine, to the negative 1/3 of e to the y. And then times cosine of e to the y. And then e raised to y dy. Okay? Kaya rin itong buo na ito, multiply natin dito sa loob at paghihiwalay natin yung integration ng bawat term. So, sine raised to negative 1/3 e to the y cosine of e to the y times e to the y dy, mamultiply natin sa 1. So, magkakaroon tayo ng sine raised to negative 1/3. So, ito ay negative 1/3 to. Negative 1/3. Negative 1/3. Tapos, and then e raised to y. And then cosine of e raised to y. Cosine of e raised to y. Tapos, meron tayong e raised to y dy. And then minus, no? Tapos, meron tayong integral sign, no? So, dito, multiply natin yung sine raised to negative 1/3 e to the y, cosine of e to the y dy, dito sa sine squared of e to the y. So, i-add natin yung kanilang exponents, no? Yung sine squared, saka yung sine to the negative 1/3. So, i-ring 2, gagawin natin 6/3, no? So, 6/3 plus negative 1/3, so that's negative, that's positive 5/3, no? So, magkakaroon tayo ng sine raised to 5/3 of e to the y. And then, cosine of e to the y dy, ano? Cosine of e to the y dy. Kaya rin nun, dito sa mga integral na yan, ano, let u equal sine of e to the y. So, let u equals sine of e to the y. And then, du, our du, no? So, yung derivative ng sine ay cosine. So, cosine of e to the y, and then times derivative of e to the y, which is e to the y dy. Okay? So, pagkari nun, itong problem, susulat natin in terms of u, no? So, meron tayong integral sign, and then meron tayong sine of e raised to y equals sa u. And then raised to negative 1/3. Negative 1/3. Pagkatapos, yung tong cosine of e raised to y, e to the y dy equals sa du. And then, meron tayong negative, ano? So, or minus. And then, integral sign. And then, sine of e raised to y. So, equals sa u. Tapos, naka-raised sa 5/3. At tapos, itong term na cosine e to the y dy equals sa du. At, saka tayo mag-integrate gamit yung general power rule. So, magkakaroon tayo ng u raised to, so negative 1/3 plus 3/3, so equals sa 2/3, ano? Divided by 2/3 or times 3/2. And then minus u raised to 5/3 plus 1 or 3/3, so that's 8/3. U raised to 8/3. Divided by 8/3 or times 3/8. And then plus c, no? Okay? And then after that, ano, we will simply plug in the value of u, which is equal to sine of e to the y para sa ating final answer. So, magkakaroon tayo ng 3/2. So, yung u, papalitan natin ng sine of e to the y. Sine raised to 2/3 of e to the y, and then minus 3/8. Tapos yung u, papalitan uli natin ng sine, no? Raised to 8/3, and then of e to the y, and then plus C. At ito na yung ating final answer.